But,
Okay.
uh, but at any rate, John, it's wonderful to meet you, sir. Thank you for taking a minute out today.
My pleasure. Thanks. Nice to be here.
Yes, sir. So let's begin our journey into your work by asking you this. 5 years ago, one of the most momentous events of our lifetime, this pandemic, happened. How did you get through that era, that 2020 pandemic era, and how has it influenced or changed the way that you do things now?
Well, it was, scary. I at the time thought, I was about 65, and I'd often thought, I might be the only generation who's lived without some significant disruption in their life. World War II, World War One, the Spanish flu, and here, this is it. This is the
Yeah.
thing. Never expected this. Um, so it was very disruptive for a while. We were washing groceries with Javix with bleach before we brought it in the house. Who knew what was going on? Um, I tried to prep my clients by helping them think about, what was new, what changed, what we should be doing about it. But honestly, what happened in the next 2 or 3 years, my business flourished. Um, I'm guessing here a little bit. People had time to watch YouTube videos, or they were in a mood to recalibrate, reconsider, and so there. I think the entire coaching business flourished in that period. We're coming out of that in 2024, and things have really kind of stabilized today. Um, so it started off for me feeling like a great big negative, but it turned out to be positive.
Yeah, for sure. So let me ask you this. If we got to the brass tacks of what you do on a daily basis, I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of kids in a school. 12, they're 12 years old. It's career day, and you walk in, and the kid in the back of the room is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer that child?
I work with business owners who are very good at a trade or a profession. So you spent 7 years becoming a lawyer, you spent 7 years becoming a physiotherapist, you had 5 years to become a Red Seal mechanic, electrician, and plumber, and you start off in business. And then you find out just because you're good at the business of at the technical work of your business doesn't mean you're good at the business of your technical work. And so translation of that is just because you're a good lawyer or a good electrician doesn't mean you're a good business owner. So I provide the education on how to become a good business owner.
So, what did you want to be when you were 12 years old? What was your dream job?
They often say what you do um, without being provoked or told to do is a precursor kind of an underlying. And so the story I like to tell, which is true, is I'm the eldest of 8 children. And every 3 weeks, I'd gather my brothers and sisters' library cards. It's a 3 mile bike ride. I'd find age and interest appropriate books for them. I'd distribute them, and 3 weeks later, I'd do it again. Nobody asked me to. And so today, I'm kind of that same Johnny Appleseed of knowledge and learning. And um, it took me a while to connect the dots there, but in fact, yeah, what you do at 8, 9, 10, 12 years old because you want to, because that's what gives you fun or joy or however you think about that. That often is what your vocation is going to be.
So, what were the foundational seeds that were built in you early on in your life that gave you this idea to get books or to be in business, to now coach and to help others? What were those foundational elements that were woven into
Yeah,
you?
so one of them is what I just described to you. The other thing is in high school, I knew I wanted to be a teacher, that I was wired to be a teacher. But in those days, being a teacher meant wearing a Harris tweed coat with elbow patches, and that bureaucratic style of teaching didn't appeal to me very much. But the critical thing was in the early 80s, I learned something called the Socratic method of leadership. So I was taught that in the business and the job I had in those days. And what that meant is Socrates said the best way to help somebody is to help them figure it out for themselves. And at the end of the day, instead of dictating as a leader, you need to, finger wagging.
Yeah.
My job was to draw out of the person who reported to me what they were going to do to achieve the goal, the result, what needed to be done. And so at the end of the day, they owned the action. Well, gosh, that's what coaching is. And so I've practiced this style of coaching since the early 80s, but became a professional coach in 2004. It was Steve Jobs who said you can only connect the dots going backwards. When I started as a coach, I had a bit of an epiphany, this wake up in the, one morning to, God, I've always been a coach. I just didn't realize it until now.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about your business career leading up to this decision to coach. You've been at the highest levels. What's been kind of your evolution in your business life that's given you these tools to help others find their way?
Yeah, so the first 17 years I was at menswear. I started as a sales guy in a store. Eventually, I became a store manager, regional manager, an executive. And so when you're leading stores, you're effectively, in a way, leading small businesses that just happen to have the same overarching corporate umbrella. So um, um, the second part of my career, I was part of something called the BC Liquor Stores. I was its president. Today it does 3 billion in sales at 200 locations and 4,000 FTEs. And so I got the sort of big picture of leading a very big organization. From there, I did a bunch of retail consulting, and through an accident, I discovered the coaching model and started that. And like I say, I had the epiphany, the aha, the moment where it landed, and oh gosh, everything I've ever done is to lead me to this point. And so coaching wasn't a new thing to me. It was an application or a way to do it in a professional way.
So who's been your inspiration? Who's been your hero in your life to allow you to get to where you're at?
Wow. You know, um, I often tell clients I've read 500 books, which may seem like a lot, but if you read 10 books a year for 50 years, you get to 500. And frankly, I think the 500 is a really conservative number because I knew at one stage of life I threw out 1,000 paperbacks. So my hero, I guess, is really what I learned through basically reading. Many people think learning stops when you leave the institution, the college or and for me, that wasn't the case. And I may not be able to point to a single person, but I can point to a single resource.
What about leaders? You mentioned Steve Jobs. Who has been a leader that you've emulated? I mean, we have Lee Iacocca. We have all these examples of people that have done such wonderful work leading. Who do you look up to?
In the coaching world, it'd be guys like Marshall Goldsmith. Um, at any given time, it's a evolving parade. I don't know that, that's not a very satisfactory answer. But it goes back to what I said. I'm constantly learning, and so how I think about things evolves over time. Um, and so I would say that it's the fact that many of my clients consider me to be very, very technical. I don't know why that's the case. I'm generally more capable than they are, but it's just stuff I, stumbled into and learned because it was interesting. So um, that isn't an exact answer to your question, but
No,
it's
no,
an
that's
answer
good.
that's true for me.
Yeah, I mean it's almost kind of like always having that existential moment where you're just moving down the road and
Yeah,
everything will influence you because there's so many humans on this planet that inspire us every day, you know.
yeah.
It's hard to pinpoint sometimes.
Well, yeah, that's how I'm thinking about it. One of the fun things you can do with Chat GPT nowadays is after it gets 3 years of experience with you, it can do a pretty good job of reflecting back to you
Yeah,
what you hold to be true.
yeah, for
It seems
sure.
weird, but in fact, it's pretty enlightening to get that perspective.
Yeah. Early on when you were coaching, obviously you had the epiphany. You knew that this was the path for you. But was there a client that you had that was really difficult but turned into a really good success story? Did you ever have a moment where someone really worked your powers of coaching and business and it turned out to be a really wonderful thing?
Well, there's a couple things I want to say about that. So, number one, if the owner wants a better business, first, the business needs a better owner. So that's part one. Part two is um, clients or business owners hire me because they want help with the business. But what I'd say to you in confession is that all business coaching is personal coaching in disguise.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is that often there's tactical things that need to be implemented in the business, but it's usually around mindset, leadership, communication, delegation, skills, and mindset that are the things that hold people back from the things they want to do. And so at the end of the day, coaching is about, finding ways to help liberate people from the sort of constraints that they've put themselves into. And so the greatest success is when people have some of those breakthroughs. Sometimes they're big. Some, sometimes leaps are made boulders at a time, and sometimes leaps are made grains of salt or sand at a time.
Yeah.
In both cases, they're leaps. You don't always control the scale or the scope of the leap, but in every case, there's learning and involvement and aha moments.
It's almost like a hybrid of psychology and therapy because the big thing with people is they have to get out of their own way. We're
Yeah,
our worst critics.
yeah. If I went to a business owner and said, I'm going to give you some business therapy, no one
Yeah.
would hire a business coach because they're, the nature of a business owner is they're skeptical about that. What are we going to do? Sit around and do alms or yoga or, you know, but in fact, a lot of coaching is personal coaching. We start because there's some aspect of their business that's not working, which often, by the way, is to give you an example of that, often business owners are working 60, 70 hours a week. They know it's not right. They started, I'm going to be a bit crude here. They started as Chuck with a truck. They're an electrician, and then they get 2 trucks and 5 trucks and 6 trucks. And they're still using the same approaches, the same skills they had when it was just them and a technician. And now they're wondering, how come I can't get everything done? Well, it's because you haven't learned how to transition from the mindset of being a technician owner to an operator owner to an owner to eventually being an investor owner. They're still stuck. I'm a technician basically, and I just happen to have a couple of guys I work with, and that shift is a hard one
Yeah.
for people to make.
The one thing about business too is it's always evolving. There's always different methodologies. The world's changing. AI is reshaping the way that we approach from a mental and realistic standpoint. So what do you do every day? What gets you out of bed to evolve, to stay up with the curve, to provide your clients with the highest quality? But you got to take care of your own soul and your family. What's that energy for you every day?
Honestly, it's curiosity. It's being open to learning, to recognize that I still have clients that are afraid of AI, of Chat GPT, and every day I show new ways that it can actually assist in their lives. And as I keep trying to say to them, is this train left the station like 3 years ago, and whether you're on it or not, it is moving. And so you're best to get on the train, even if it's today. Get on it today. Think about what the world looked like about 25 years ago when Google started. Well, what do you think the world's going to look like 25 years from now when AI is matured to the extent that Google has in its context? Remember using Alta Vista,
Oh
the,
yeah.
the best available search engine at the time was
Yeah.
so frustrating. And then
Yeah.
Google came along and you're, wow,
Yeah.
this is fun. Well, AI is a version of that today.
Mhm. For sure. So let me ask you this. The one thing about being a good business leader is that you have to risk. There's always risk, whether you're an entrepreneur or a business leader. What's the biggest risk that you've taken in your career?
Jeff Bezos has an interesting way. People overestimate risk, underestimate opportunity. overestimate risk, underestimate opportunity. And he has a framework that he uses, and he says decisions are like a door. If it's a one-way decision, if you go through the door and you can't go back, that's a very impactful decision. Take your time, be careful about it. If it's a two-way door, you go through the door and it doesn't work, and it's easy to reverse. Make the decision quickly. It's easy to reverse. And James Clear had a different way of talking about it. Decisions are like hats, haircuts, or tattoos. So if it's a hat decision, it's easy to flip a hat. It's like a 10-second change. Haircuts, well, that might take 3 weeks. Although I once said that to a woman and she said 3 months. Okay. But tattoo decisions are very hard to reverse, right? Once you get a tattoo, it's hard to reverse that.
Yeah.
The other pivotal moment for me that led to a big breakthrough is, and this goes back to the question of what a business owner is doing with their time, is what is the highest and best use of your time, Mr. Ms. Business Owner? In my case, that happened to be talking to clients and prospects. That was the one thing, at least in my business, I did better than anybody else could. And the breakthrough for me was, well, that's the only thing I should do. That's all I do with my time. If it isn't talking to a client or a prospect, someone else is going to do it,
Yeah.
but it won't be me. And that shift is what allowed me to triple, quadruple the revenue of my business. And it's a big centering, our big central philosophy of what I help business owners figure out is, what are you doing that creates the most value for your business? And anything that isn't on your list, I'm going to use a crude word, that's on your oh shit list.
Yeah.
What's your oh shit list? It's the stuff you do that you procrastinate about, or, oh God, I got to do receivables, or I got to do payroll, anything that causes you to say, oh shit, I have to.
Yeah.
Well, that's a clear mark that it's time that you stopped doing that work and asked yourself, not how can I get this done? A better question is, how can this get done?
So let me ask you this. If you had a dream tonight, ran into the 18-year-old version of you, ready to go out into the world and change it all, and you could give yourself a piece of advice based on this life you've lived, the wisdom you've gained, what advice would you impart on that younger version of you?
It's true what you say. The older you get, the less you care about what others think, and the more you're confident in what you believe to be true. And so as 18-year-olds, 20-year-olds, I had a lot more doubt than confidence. And today the reverse is true. I'm very confident about the things I know to be true, and I'm prepared to act on it, and not concerned about the consequence. Um, that's the best advice I'd give somebody. Just be confident what you hold to be true.
For sure. So
Oh,
let me,
the other thing I would say about that is most of the mistakes in life I've made is when I didn't trust my intuition,
yeah.
when I had this nagging feeling in my gut and I didn't act on it, or I delayed on acting on it. Most of the mistakes are when I procrastinated about something I was avoiding.
So let's say you walk into a room of everybody that knows you in a business sense, a client in your coaching world, and you could walk to the front of that room and tell them a fun story about you, something that might humanize you, the first concert you went to, a wonderful place you traveled to, jumping out of an airplane, some kind of fun story that would kind of show you in a different light.
How do you define joy? Or how do you define happiness? Well, for me, for many, many, many years, joy for me was skiing on a powder day. And I developed a bit of a philosophy about that. So my personal email address is at jdip.ca, and jdip is an acronym for just another day in paradise. That's a good philosophy to have.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you this. Of everything that you've accomplished and evolved to at this point in your life, what are you the proudest of?
Well, I'll tell you this. In 2011, I attempted suicide. I was at a very dark place in my life, very difficult place. Um, in 2015, I did a TEDx talk about that experience. If you go to Nieuwenburg and Google Nieuwenburg and TEDx, you'll see the talk. And it was me being an advocate for better understanding mental health. And so the thing I would say that I'm most proud of is recovering from that place in my life. And today I enjoy a very successful career, a life I love to live. I didn't think that that was possible at that time, but um, what I'd encourage people to feel like if it's as bad as it ever could be, I can promise you it can't get better if that's the choice you make.
So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, everyone that knows you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Um, I'm hardwired to be a teacher, hardwired to be a coach. And what I'm particularly good at, I think, is, and this is based on feedback I get, I'm really good at listening to a client describe their situation. I understand the underlying challenge or difficulty with that situation. I can get the client to see that, to recognize that for often the very first time, and then to give them a path, a way that they can move forward from where they are. So I'm really good at having people are always amazed at how I'm able to pull out a resource, a tool, a diagnostic framework, some tool, anecdote thing that helps them move forward with that. So I'm really good at the diagnosis and the prescription part of what I do as a coach. I've always known that to be true, but it's very gratifying to hear that reflected by people's testimonials.
So, John, if anyone wants to hire you, they want to reach out, they have questions, any of the good business, where's the best place to go?
Well, I'm easy to find at w5coaching.com. Let me tell you the story of W5. So, the Socratic method, the underpinning of that is that you help somebody by helping them figure it out. You do that because you help guide them through questions, right? And the 5 core questions are who, what, when, or why.
Yeah,
So, W5 coaching.
I love it. It's excellent. It's kind of a journalistic standard too. It,
It is exactly right. That's what they teach you in journalism.
Inverted pyramid for sure. John, this has been wonderful, sir. Thank you so much. I will put links in the show notes. It's so great to have this moment to talk about your business. Best of luck with everything. I appreciate it.
Joe, you've been great. Thanks for
Thank you.
your great questions. And some of them kind of put me back on my heels as I had to